Look within. Look within. Look within. And live your life. And live your life on the edge of two worlds. A reality where you find true understanding of who you are. Take the step into the unknown with Alexander McCaig and Jason Rigby as they explore the thinly veiled world of consciousness, spirit, and the human condition. Join them in embodying the oneness of all. Walk the cliff's edge between the seen and the unseen realities. Welcome to High Density Living.
Alex.
Jason.
We are live on the Higher Density Living.
I am juiced right now.
Oh, yeah. I'm more than that. I feel like we're going to be just transferring a ton of energy today.
It's just the biggest consciousness transfer energy we've ever had.
Oh, this is going to be awesome. Today we have an amazing show. What are we talking about?
Crystals.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be, it's a crystal world. A whole new world. You know what I'm talking about? It's like Aladdin, but the badass crystal version.
Yeah, if they didn't have Will Smith on the new Aladdin, I think it would have not done well.
It would have been a flop.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, though, yet.
I haven't, but I'm going to assume only because of Will Smith, it wasn't a flop.
Yeah, it wasn't a flop. Yeah, exactly. I know a lot of people liked it.
Now I got to go watch it because we talked about it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've seen the first one.
I love the first one.
It. Yeah, anytime you got magic carpet flying, I'm
on it. Yeah. Stealing stuff from a market.
I know there's okay, we're gonna digress real quick before we get into crystals.
Genies.
Yes, not genies. We're gonna talk about
Robin Williams.
No, wasn't there.
Sorry.
It's fine, bro. Because I'm teeing you up right now.
I feel it right now.
Can you feel this?
This feels good.
Okay, I'm throwing this out. So what are the paintings or the drawings of magic carpet in India?
Oh,
and in the Middle East.
Oh, in the Middle East? You're talking about the geometry.
Yes.
Oh, because
were they transferring? Like, were they flying actually, or?
Well, that was the contention. So they were trying to figure out, are these carpets actually vehicles, right?
Right.
Because like Solomon,
mm-hmm.
King Solomon apparently had one of these things and took them all over the place.
Right.
And he landed his magic carpet on like multiple mountaintops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do carpets fly? In Aladdin, they did.
Yes. Yeah. In Aladdin, yeah. But it's interesting. So, but I know they have like drawings and paintings of people flying on carpets,
which is interesting, right? It's an interesting vehicle that they choose,
mm-hmm.
you know. And it's also funny that as a tapestry, right? And then the U.S. dollar's measurements were matched to Arabian carpets or Persian rugs. That actual size, the scaling of it.
Oh yes, yes, you're exactly right. Yeah,
it's funny.
Or a yoga mat.
Or a yoga mat.
Yeah, if you took a dollar bill and stretched it out.
Same thing, man. It's all the same, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting.
It's funny that I don't forget why they would even want to mirror it like that, but I don't know. That's another episode.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into crystals because I want us to understand the science.
That's what's important.
Part of it, and so I want to start. Let's start in the beginning. So let's explain to people, and I'm going to have you do that, Alex. Where did crystals come from?
Right.
Where did they have their beginning?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so if we're looking at the Earth is a function of it's a mineral kingdom, right? It's this huge piece of rock which has been brought together, and within that rock we have all these little nuances to it, right? These variations, and these variations give us our crystals. And these crystals, throughout the dawn of time, have grown in pockets within the Earth's crust for millions and millions and millions and millions of years. And there are these huge deposits in certain areas of the globe. For instance, the United States, right? If you're listening there, right? Hopefully we have listeners all over the globe.
Well, we should have German listeners.
Yeah, but Deezer.
Sure. Yeah, we have Deezer.
Yeah, run Deezer. We got the Germans. And the Germans love crystals.
Yeah, exactly.
But in Arkansas, they have huge crystal beds, right? Massive ones underground. Or if you go to New York State, you can openly mine like quartz crystals. That's above ground.
Oh, that's cool.
Right? And like you said, Chihuahua, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can go down to Brazil where you can get all those huge geodes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The Earth has these wonderful pockets underneath where crystals can grow undisturbed. And the key word is grow. Right? And we're going to move into that. But since the dawn of time, these things have been growing in these pockets of frankly, energy. These crystals have become something that was a piece of nature but is now attuned to all of our technology that we currently use today. And we can thank just about absolutely everything we're currently using, even these microphones, for crystals.
Well, and we don't even realize we consume crystals.
All the time.
Yeah.
What's that? What rock do you eat?
I mean, there's a lot. I know salt
right?
is a crystal.
Most of your vitamins and minerals, you know when they call them minerals?
Yeah.
It's because they've been dissolved down into a point where they can actually get into the bloodstream. All you're doing is consuming crystals.
Yeah, and then I know our computers.
Our
And we'll
computers,
get into that a little bit.
semiconductors, hard drives, all that stuff.
Radio.
TV screens, radios.
Yes. Yeah, that's what LCD
Watches
stands for.
What about your watches?
Yes, yeah, exactly. I know on my watch it has rubies in there.
Yep.
And then they call it a quartz watch for a reason.
That's correct. And we can talk about the quartz.
Yeah.
We'll talk all about it.
And quartz is interesting because, and we'll get into it, but quartz like stabilizes.
SiO2, silicon dioxide.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you are dealing with quartz, that's why they use them for watches and stuff.
Right.
Because it stabilizes and it's pretty precise too at the same time.
And that's what's important about it. We can dig into it. So we want to go over the history. What have you learned about crystals, Jason?
That I need quartz because if I'm erratic and emotional,
yeah,
and I need to stabilize myself,
I need more quartz. And just more quartz.
So I'm just going to get a bunch of quartz and have it all around me everywhere.
Right. Or even silica, right? We're all,
right.
All of us from a health standpoint we're all deficient in silica. So, and that's important for your hair, your nails, your skin, collagen production in the body. And that's a rock. So you're telling me I need a rock to put inside my body so that it can help my hair and my nails grow. And my skin produce its collagen, right? The peptides that are required so that I have elasticity and shit like that.
So is there like silica supplements or how does that work?
No, it actually comes right out of the ground. They put those supplements in your basic vitamins and you'll see that. Silica capsules, whether it's a large or small amount.
Right.
And some people ingest food-grade diatomaceous earth, right? To counter that. And it also helps clear out their bowels and stuff, but that's a side point.
I think you were telling me about that, right?
Yeah. I mean, I take it. I love it.
Yeah. I'll have to look into that on that one. But, one of the things that I noticed about crystals is the ability for people to look at them and have a bad rap, and we think it's just a hippie shop.
Oh, yeah.
And that there's these new age people, with man buns like you have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A man
that
bun.
meditate.
It's the new one you can get at Cinnabon when you go in there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You're just as sweet though, right?
Just as sweet. Plenty of icing on me.
Yeah. But when you look at the now I'm all fucked up.
Don't even think about it. Yeah. Disregard. Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna let that go.
Yeah, that was a Lord.
The show has gone NC-17.
Yeah, we just hit it.
Yeah.
So when I think about crystals, my whole philosophy on it was, these are people, they believe in angels and they believe in elves and they believe in aliens and they, and then they're holding these crystals and they're thinking, they're getting something out of it. So I think a lot of people, like normal people, let's just use that word. It's what we would view normal, whatever normal is.
We'll call them normies.
Yeah, normies. Yeah. Like people like me just kind of been like, oh, okay, whatever. There's no science with this.
Classic.
You hold these, you guys do your thing around your campfire. But at the end of the day, I am not going to do that. I've been interested in them. It's been interesting, but it wasn't until you mentioned it to me and I began to study.
Yeah.
That I began to see the science part of it.
Can we talk about that? That is,
yes.
Study is the most important part. We're mentioning things, not so that we can shove it down people's throats, right? Our listeners. We do that so we can all learn and teach ourselves, right? And then teach and learn from others, right? This is what we're trying to do. It's not for us to tell you this is the godforsaken truth of things. It's for you to decide with the information we put in front of you whether or not you want to follow through with something like that. Or even educate yourself further, right? We're here to introduce you and guide you on the journey that we're learning.
And your learning may be 2 months, 6 months, 6 years.
That's okay.
60 years. It's okay. It's fine.
No time on it.
No, there's no time.
First of all, first episode, time's not real.
And if somebody's looking at it and they're saying, I can't believe any of this stuff, that's fine.
That's fine.
We're not
asking you to believe, but we will tell you the science.
Yes. Yeah. We're gonna get into the science.
Yeah.
Because we believe that science is codependent upon what the universe teaches us.
That's correct. How we transition into the future and how we understand nature itself.
And a lot of science is just proving what has been around
for all this time. That was difficult to understand.
Yes. Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So now we're putting it in terms, we've gotten to a time where we have the ability to analyze stuff and have procedures so that we can understand beyond a reasonable doubt that this outcome is going to continue to happen. And that's what's called scientific fact.
Right.
So I don't want people to think fact is law of the universe.
Right.
Fact is, from what we can tell on all the outcomes of running this experiment, that it will continue to happen in that same function. And that becomes a scientific fact. It doesn't mean it's necessarily true. It's just what the most reasonable outcome will be.
Yeah, and I think when we look at crystals, and I encourage you to do that. I went on YouTube and watched, and there were the foo-foo videos, but then there's a lot of science with crystals because something happened like in the early 19th century.
Yes.
Where crystals became extremely important. And I'll have you get into that.
So let's think about it, right? So we had the Archaic period,
right,
which was way, way back. This is like pre-Roman era.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to them, the people at the time, Druids, right, certain groups, when they looked at things in nature, everything had a soul.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely everything had a soul. There was an interconnectedness. There was a relationship that they shared with these things that were all around them. And one of the things that was very special were gems and crystals and stone, because it took a very long time for these things to grow, so they felt that they had the most amount of knowledge on this planet. And they had a beauty of the color that they, whether it be rubies or emeralds or, garnet or all these different things that would emit a frequency that would show this color, like this is something of beauty, this is something to be pondered. Why would this living being choose to be like this? And so they, in the Archaic periods, long time ago, they gave certain prowess to these things, right? And then as you moved into the era of like the Greco-Romans, now it became a function of let's study how we can manipulate these stone. And then you had sculptures, and then the kings start to wear gemstones, and it becomes now a symbol of power, right? Mm-hmm. So it's this rare, beautiful thing that we try and find on the earth, and then when you can collect it and you can show your wealth, you also show the power. So there was a respect to the stone itself.
Right.
And then that relationship started to change. And then over time, we start moving closer to our period. Well, post that, late 1800s and stuff, is when we began to crush stones, and we got our mineral supplements, right? It was early days of like alchemy and people understanding how did the homeopathy work in the body for healing ourselves and how do we use these mineral supplements. And now it's something we use on a daily basis. But now we've moved into a point where we can take all these different periods of time that we know, from the Archaic now to our current time, and then use that as a blend of ideas to truly understand what these crystals, what the mineral kingdom is doing for us in our world, right? How it actually applies to us. And this is not something that deals with a pseudoscience. This is actual science. And I don't think people realized how much crystals are actually involved in their life. So I think it's important.
It's every day. I guarantee you, every hour you're involved with the crystal.
Yeah, if you have...
Externally, not just internally.
No, we won't even... Not the internal part.
Right. If you're looking at a computer screen, you're involved with the crystal.
Cell phone?
Yeah. Cell
crystals.
Phone. Yeah.
Crystal,
Watch,
crystal.
Yeah, all our electronics.
You driving a car? Crystal.
Yeah.
Pavement outside? Crystal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sky? Crystal. People are like, what do you mean the sky's crystal?
Drinking water.
I'll explain it to you why it's crystal. Yeah. But so let's start with the science. So you got into a guy, what was his name? Marcel Vogel, right?
Yes.
Interesting,
I love that guy.
Interesting dude.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Real
Real
interesting.
Guys. Yeah. Marcel Vogel. Vogel. Marcel Vogel. So Marcel Vogel, Jason, what do you know about him before I start dipping into some facts
Well, I
here?
know that he invented the floppy disk and the hard drive.
Cool. And who did he work for?
IBM.
International Business Machines.
Yes, and they
Pretty
were
big
like,
computer company, right?
They were like how Google is now. Back in the day, IBM was the shiz.
B and the D.
Yeah,
they were the shiz.
Yeah. They were the leading technology,
right,
at its best. And he came into a conclusion, and I want you to scientifically explain it, but he came to a conclusion where when you hold a crystal,
yes,
or you tap crystal, and you put an oscilloscope to that.
Ooh, what's an oscilloscope? Oscilloscope's the thing that shows you sine waves on a graph. So if you have a graph, it'll show you the different waves of frequency that affect a crystal.
And we use oscilloscopes for everything.
Absolutely everything.
Right,
it's applied to so many different things. Huge, like, scientific instrument in physics, astronomy, all that stuff.
And so when he hooked the oscilloscope up to a crystal, he noticed, or he put pressure on a crystal.
Ooh, pressure. We'll talk about that too, what that is.
He noticed that things began to happen on the oscilloscope. And
the frequency changed on the crystal.
Yes. And then the crystal began to act differently according to external stimuli.
Wait, act. Act is a word for something that's animate, something that would be living.
Yes, that's something that would be living.
When we look at crystals, in my assumption, when I looked at a rock's alive. Are they? Have you, in your entire life, have you ever looked at a rock and be like, that's a living thing?
No, I don't think we look at it that way. But
we don't.
When we scientifically take this crystal and we know that we can put pressure on it we can take a small crystal, you can take a small crystal, put a oscilloscope on each end, an alligator clip on each end, put pressure on it, and it absorbs your energy.
Really cool.
Yeah, and you can watch that on the oscilloscope
in real time.
Yes, or you can tap it.
Yeah.
And you can go tap, tap, tap and watch it. That is amazing.
So we're going to go in a lot of different directions with just that right here.
I want to stay on the living being part. And a lot of people, okay, we know crystals are ancient.
Yes, they are.
We were talking earlier before the show, that, what was the one I was trying to remember? Garnet, yes,
That's
thank
why
you.
I brought it up again. I thought it would
I
just
know, I
brush
saw that,
past the
yeah.
memory.
Garnet, just for the atoms to layer, it takes 10 million years. So if we're looking at them as being, and I want you to explain how crystals are alive.
Cool.
Because I think we should go right into that, because I know people are going to think that's foo-foo, but at the end of the day, it's proven. So I want to get into that part about being alive beings, but they are the most ancient beings we have on planet Earth.
You bet they are. They're older than mushrooms, and mushrooms are some of the oldest and largest things we have here. It's fungi, right? So let's look at Marcel Vogel for a second. Marcel Vogel, he was 27 years at IBM. Now, what he had realized through his liquid crystal research, right? And liquid crystal is one of the earlier days of televisions. Remember how expensive they were?
Yes.
Oh, man. Well, in a crystal, if you look at the old Pink Floyd album, when you put light through the prism, right? Remember that little triangle? Mm-hmm. And you see the rainbow that comes out the other side? Okay. The same thing was happening with your computer screens. So it was emitting a certain frequency of light to go through a certain part of the screen, and the liquid crystal would emit a certain color. Scientific term is called propagation. So it's propagation of light through a medium, right? So it's like, how does it move through a physical substance, and how does that alter its wavelength? Okay. And that gives you certain colors like green or red or yellow or things like that. So what Marcel realized was that if you're looking at the crystal, through its ability to change the light that goes through, but the frequency with the oscilloscope means it has the ability to receive and store information. How does that even, I don't even understand how that comprehends. You tell me a rock can think and remember something? Well, it's not the fact that the rock is actually thinking. What it's doing is it's taking the energy and the thought that you have, and it's storing it within its atomic structure. So now, in a right-handed clockwise motion, crystals grow, right? And they grow from a seed, much like you do when you're in your mother's womb, right?
And I encourage people to go, I don't mean to interrupt you, Alex, but I encourage people to go and look online. You'll see how crystals grow. How do they grow?
Yeah, so they grow in specifically geometric shapes, right?
On their own.
On their own, right? If left undisturbed, they grow in perfect symmetry. And that's what's important. Okay?
That's so wild.
And by undisturbed, this is a very important concept because this deals with vibration and frequency. But this is also a large thing that the crystals kind of focus on, right? So if we're looking at crystals having the ability to receive, store, and release information, that isn't contingent upon how these grow in their atomic structure. So if the crystal begins to layer itself in a clockwise motion, it begins to have facets or edges, right? So a quartz crystal may have 6 edges, hexagonal, right? On salt grows in a square shape. So salt's only going to have 4 sides. And so with every 4 sides it completes, it then starts to grow another layer on top until the crystal gets to a point of termination. And termination means it's either run out of space or some means of the crystal receiving the mineral it needs to bind to it so that it can grow, right?
Right, and you have temperature and stuff like that.
Temperature, precipitation, pressure. When you're in your mother's womb, she's feeding you food and energy, and you're sitting in that amniotic fluid. Is that what it's called, amniotic fluid? Mm-hmm. Okay. All those things are putting an environment which allow you to flourish, right?
And
that
to grow,
seed to bloom, right? The same thing happens in nature in these little pockets underneath the earth that allowed this seed of the crystal, right? The unit cell is what it's called, right? And we all grow from a unit cell. It bifurcates, the egg, the zygote, all that other good stuff. So that unit cell then begins to replicate. You start building the cells. Like you build different parts of your body. It begins to replicate over and over and over and create this new DNA. Well, the thing is, the crystal is doing that, but it's doing it in a perfect geometrical structure. And depending on how the atoms lay themselves out, gives yourself the type of mineral you're looking to get.
Yeah, because you'll see like pyramids, you'll see like
pyramids, squares, octagonal, hexagonal, cube, anything like that.
Sacred geometry.
Sacred geometry, right? And the reason people look at sacred geometry is because that pairs with what nature is naturally doing. Simple as that.
And so would that be a higher design?
Oh, of course it'd be a higher design. If anything, it'd be the most perfect design because now you're aligning with the thing that you actually are created with.
So having something that digresses or has chaos in it,
yeah,
is opposite of sacred geometry.
Right. And you could have sacred geometry turn into chaos, but at its base, at least it's built with that perfect symmetry, right?
And I was watching, they were putting under the microscope, they had little, like warming pads they'd put the slide on.
Yeah.
So they'd put like, crystal, and then they would put, like some medium that would make it grow.
Yes.
And then they would introduce another crystal near it. And it was so interesting how they would merge, and then they would begin to form, complete squares or these.
Because you're giving it more resources to grow,
Yes.
like a goldfish in a tank. If you give it a bigger tank, the goldfish continues to grow in size,
Right.
or a lobster in the ocean if left undisturbed. But Marcel Vogel,
Which lobsters will grow for a lifetime.
for a lifetime, and they're highly regenerative, right?
Which people don't realize about that, but that's another.
That's another thing. We'll talk about lobsters later. We'll have a lobster episode.
And then how could we live forever?
How can we live forever?
Because we have, there are actual, proven scientifically, there are actual viruses, animals that live forever,
yeah,
left undisturbed.
be like the virus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But a virus is a living being.
Of course it is.
So why couldn't a crystal be a living being?
There's no reason for it not to be. And it sits inside the mineral kingdom. You have plant kingdom, animal kingdom, mineral kingdom.
Right.
Shame on you for saying it's something that's not alive. Just because it grows an albeit much slower growth rate
Right.
doesn't mean it's not a living thing. Comes from a seed.
Does it have a conscience?
So here's the thing, right? So if the crystal's a living thing, does it have consciousness? Does it actually think for itself? Crystals receive and store. They amplify, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did Marcel Vogel figure that out? So what he figured out is that if you're attaching an oscilloscope, right, and I'm looking at this crystal, when he was at IBM, he realized that if you can impress some sort of data or a frequency onto that crystal, it will hold onto that crystal for a period of time. In the atomic structure of the crystal, you have little pockets, little gaps of the atoms. And in these pockets is what gets filled in to hold that information. That's what changes the frequency. So it's these minor atomic imperfections, right? So Marcel looked at it, and they were at IBM. They were like, okay, so how are we going to test this out? And what they did is they took the frequency of the image of the Mona Lisa, and they transmitted that frequency, that harmonic frequency, into the crystal itself. And they realized that the crystal, after a period of like a week or more, held on to that image of the frequency when they pulled it back off of the crystal, attaching the oscilloscope. And then they realized at that moment, crystals have the ability to receive, store, and release information. And that was
and this is all like we're not making this up.
We're not making this. This happened at IBM.
So our computers in the start of the technology boom all came from crystals.
Everything, all your semiconductors, all your printed circuit boards, everything that makes your smartphone, what you're listening to right now, is thanks to a crystal.
Yes.
Okay? And that's important, right? So IBM kind of went gangbusters with that, and that's where the hard drives come from. But where did Marcel take his turn, right? After 27 years of research at IBM and all of his patents that he did and creation of the floppy disk.
He had over, it was hundreds of patents.
Oh, he had a ton, right?
Yeah.
What he found was that the signal that comes from the crystal could be improved dependent on the geometry of the crystal, right? So the quality of how it was either grown or cut would increase the radio frequency signal of that crystal, its coherence. All right? This is not something you can visibly see with your eyes, but in certain spectrums of physics, you would be able to see this frequency that actually does get emitted from the crystal. So this crystal is listening, storing, and sending actual images or information, right? And he kind of took off with it, and he realized that this perfect coherence that he finds in a crystal, depending on how it's cut, they did research that if you take the crystal and you think about what you want to happen, changes the internal frequency of that crystal. So that oscilloscope that was touched to the ends would actually tell him that what he was thinking could be stored inside that crystal, and dependent on the geometry of it, the quality of how that crystal has been grown or cut, would determine how well you could then take that frequency of information you put in and then receive it back. How well it gets blasted out, almost like a radio antenna.
Right. Well, I've seen that where they have like crystals in Arizona and certain areas that were actually picking up radio stations.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, and you could kind of hear it faintly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they listen for it, right?
So are all these crystals all around the world listening?
All the time. And so when you think that the crystal's listening not only to radio signals, but when they found out that the crystal actually listens to your conscious thoughts, so the energy of your thought actually gets embedded in the crystal, changes its natural frequency, that's an interesting connection. That means my thoughts, so if the entire crystal bed of the earth, right, and we'll talk about everything's crystal, if it's listening, so that means my thoughts are actually affecting what's going on in the earth. That's not a fallacy. That's a fact of science and what's happened with the crystals. My conscious thought physically affects the vibrational frequency of this crystal.
But not just your conscious thought.
It's everybody's.
Humanity's.
Right. So you have a group conscious thought because in all of our connectedness of consciousness, which we learned from our first episode, right? Thanks to Russell Targ. If we look at it now we have a group like combined conscious thought, and we're now doing all this thing that alters the frequency of the earth and the crystals within it. It's going to change its tone, right? Almost like if we, I guess, say think poorly,
right?
It puts the bell out of tone, right?
Right.
Or the symphony of instruments sound out of tune. And we don't want to do that. We want to put things back in tune. Now, there's only so many ways you can get a crystal to form, right? There's 219 different possible crystal symmetries that actually happen. And what we want to find is that perfect amount of coherence, and that's what we've done with our technology, right? Is how do we find the right type of geometry of a crystal to put into a semiconductor so that it works optimally? So that we can put the right amount of information of 0 and 1s to pass through this so our computer becomes faster, smarter, stronger, lasts longer, all these different things, right? And that's important. And if it wasn't for the work of Marcel Vogel to show us that, we wouldn't have known that these crystals were a living, thinking thing, right? Growing slow and being a part of the mineral kingdom. They're actually a living being, right? So in our phone, you have a living being. And that bridge that we want to make, looking at the world in that perspective, that it's no longer an inanimate object.
Right.
This is something that we are actually interacting with, and it can store our thoughts. There's a lot of possibilities that can happen with something like that, and that's what we want to move into, right?
So this is interesting. So what I'm getting is the thoughts that we're putting out.
Yeah.
As humanity, as we look at the world today.
Correct.
And I'm just going to focus on Earth, not the universe.
We don't have to look at anything else. Just look at Earth.
And so these crystals are millions of years old.
Yes.
And they've been listening
this entire time. Tuning themselves. Like you're tuning a piano, right? And it's the Earth's crust is made of rock, and all rock is a crystalline structure. It has some sort of geometrical lattice to it that determines what type of mineral it might be. So the entire Earth, all of its crust, is crystal. And that's just the Earth. And we're going to move into how you yourself and the sky and everything else is a crystal. So what we do, our thoughts are actually affecting the vibration of the Earth. The Earth has a Schumann resonance. 7.23 or whatever it might be as a base resonance. It's the thing that actually allows life to flourish here.
Which is funny because like perfect pH I think is 7.2 or something, right?
Yeah, which is around the thing. So why does perfect pH also match the Schumann resonance?
And we'll get into that,
right?
pH with your body.
pH
when we
with
get
the
into
body.
Fitness.
Big time, right?
Diet.
And if we're thinking about, I got to make this bridge here in my mind. If we're thinking about the crystals themselves and the sound, right? It's the sound and the form and the thought. How is it that we move from thinking that these crystals aren't alive, but use it to our advantage, right? And understanding that if we are crystals and we think about the crystals and our thoughts that we have affect a quartz crystal, silicon dioxide, right? It's like writing on a hard drive. It's like saving a file. If our thoughts can do that with our consciousness, why is it that what we think cannot also affect the crystals that are inside of our body?
Because in all of... I'm going to answer this question for the normalies.
Oh, please answer it for me.
Because we think we can use objects and that they don't have a soul or a conscience.
No.
We do that with the animals that we eat. They're just objects to use to further ourselves and our ego.
Sure.
We do that with the technology, with the crystals.
Big time.
We do that with the earth, the resources that we have that have been given to us. We do that with people.
Yeah.
We use them to accomplish what we want to selfishly accomplish.
Sure.
So why would we not do that with crystals?
Why would you want to do it with a crystal, right? Well, the crystal's receiving and storing that information. So say you have a thought, but it's kind of erratic. It's not like a healthy thought. The crystal understands that from an oscilloscope. If you're measuring that thought on the crystal, it's like saving like a corrupted file on your hard drive. You know, you can't open it back up.
No, yeah, exactly.
Or like you may get like a virus because it's bad, but you've stored it to the hard drive unknowingly. What's it going to do? It's going to cripple the computer. It's going to ruin the programming.
Right.
So imagine if all of us are having those really shitty thoughts, right? The earth is listening. The crystals within the earth are picking up on these things, okay? And then if you're doing that, what's it going to do? It's going to destroy the programming, and that's going to make everybody sick. Because we all resonate with this frequency. The cells in your body resonate with the crystal of the earth. So what does that mean, right? So that means my cellular structure is also dependent on how I treat the earth.
Yes, exactly.
Holy shit. Wait a minute. We just made a bridge for a second. Let's think about this, right?
This is really important.
This is important. How I treat the mineral kingdom is also dependent on how I treat myself. There's not a disconnect. There's a connection. All really is one. The crystalline structure of this, what this thing is and what I think is actually going to affect me.
Right.
Even when I thought it was something outside of my body.
Animal kingdom.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it. Because we all feed off of it. Your soil is crystalline in structure.
Yes.
All it is a bunch of minerals put together. Dirt.
And what do we do with the soil? We use it to further, and we want to exploit it with chemicals. We want to take things and use them till they're done, and it's like our trash. We just throw it away. We have no consequences for what happens afterwards.
Non-consequential actions, right? It's our train of thought is limited. There's no...
so a crystal that's been around for 80 million years.
Yeah.
Its thought process is totally different than ours.
Totally different.
Ours
right?
is 80 years.
But it's just being the crystal. It's what it's doing is just being itself.
Right.
It has no ego. It does nothing else. It does exactly what it's supposed to do, regardless of your good or bad. So then
so a crystal can store bad.
Of course it could.
So
right?
if there's crystals in a certain area, and there's all these
people having negative thoughts
that are having huge negative thoughts, and corruption and all that, it's
non-coherent. If we stare at the physics of it, right, the energy is non-coherent. The crystal will pick up on that.
So like that cave in Chihuahua.
Sure.
Which is unbelievable. It looks like something out of an alien ship. Yeah. You guys need to look that up. It's called the Cave of Crystals. It's in Chihuahua, Mexico. When you see the pictures, you're going to just be blown away.
Jaw-dropping.
And then you look at issues that are facing Mexico right now with the corruption and the way that the country is. Those crystals are recording all that.
Big time. But they also amplify like a radio antenna. And they understood this at IBM, right? That's how you go to read the file off the computer. So depending on the size and the geometry depends on how much you amplify that thought. So if I have a whole bunch of bad thought, what is that going to do? You're going to magnify it significantly. And it's not because the crystal's being bad. It's just because it's the information that it's storing and recording because of what you're thinking. It's reading the energy of that area.
So you would, to like, with something like that, you would probably need hundreds of higher conscious beings to come into that cave.
Yeah.
Clear out that energy.
Or even like a higher thought, right? Do whatever you can to keep impressing and putting better thoughts into it. Because
the more that you have a higher thought, the crystals that are around you constantly are absorbing your thought process.
Right. It becomes better.
So when you're yelling at your wife,
yeah,
or kicking the dog, or being mean to your child,
yeah,
that is transmitting not just inside of you,
but everywhere else.
Yes.
It's a resonant frequency, right? Because crystals act in frequency. They understand that. That's what they store. So then we got to make a bridge because you and I are all about making these bridges.
Yeah,
right?
We always talk about bridges. For some
Love
reason.
good bridges. We're like we're the spiritual bridge engineers, right? How is it that everything in the world is a crystal? Well, let's start with the simplest of simple, right? What is the number one thing our body needs to survive? Outside of oxygen.
Water.
Water.
Yeah, you can only live for how long without water?
I don't know. A
it's
couple
not that
days?
long.
Yeah, it's not long, right?
Especially here in New Mexico.
Oh, it's dry and hot. You know what I mean? But water is a crystal, is it not?
Yes.
In liquid form.
Right.
That's interesting. So if my body is 75 to 76% water.
Which is proven.
Okay, and the other majority salt, right? And other stuff. That means my body's one giant walking crystal. Interesting. Now, if my body's a giant crystal and my bones inside my body have a geometric lattice structure that are also crystal, because my bone is made out of a certain mineral.
But even on the cellular base, the way that it grows.
The way that it grows.
On the atomic base, the way that it grows.
Right. So
crystals.
My bone is white, right? Because it's made of a certain mineral, calcium. And calcium has a mineral structure.
Yes.
And it grows from a seed, right? In a certain geometry, which defines what it is. So my bone is crystal. The water in my body's crystal. My muscles are crystal. Every single cell that I have is crystal. Okay? All right.
Your brain.
My brain is crystal. So then you begin to wonder, so, okay, the earth is resonating at a Schumann frequency. Then my body, which is a giant crystal, also has to resonate at a frequency. Okay. Let's keep that in mind now. Now, we talked about earlier that if I have a thought, okay, and that thought can be stored within crystal, that means what I'm doing can change the coherence, the vibrational frequency of what is happening throughout my body, because my body is one giant crystal.
I love that, yes.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
I want to keep that super, super simple, all right? So my body's a giant thing of water. That's a liquid crystal. My bones and everything. And if crystals receive, store, and emit information, depending on the quality of that crystal, right? Then what I think, my consciousness, will alter the frequency of every cell inside my body.
That's crazy. So when you get a group of people, let's say you get 10,000 people and they're at a rock concert.
Sure.
And you're feeling it and they're feeling it. And then the guys on stage are...
What do they call it? You're vibing, right?
Yes.
What is vibe? Vibe is in...
Are we like EDM? Let's go. Let's say...
Armin van Buuren.
Yeah, Armin van Buuren's up
above
there,
and beyond. Anybody's up there, right? And we love
he's up
him.
there making the music. We love him. We're in the crowd. We're going nuts. Everybody else is.
We're vibing.
Mm-hmm.
What is a vibe? What's the vibe? The abbreviation for?
Vibration. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's starting to make a little bit more sense. So all these crystals, 50,000 of us standing in a crowd, are all thinking the same thought and resonating at a group frequency. That's why the energy starts to feel so palpable at that point, right?
Because of the continuity?
Because of the continuity. It's called, not continuity in physics, it's called coherence.
Mm.
Right? Those waves that you find in the oscilloscope, if they all blend and match each other, that's called coherence.
So just as you would put alligator clips on a crystal,
you can put it on your nipples.
you can put it on, yes.
And we're all vibrating.
And we're all vibrating at the same.
Right.
At that moment. The instrument is the music.
And you are also that instrument.
Mm.
Do not forget that.
Yes. Because we're storing that information.
You're storing the sounds.
And we're emitting that information.
Ah, there you go. The sounds, how you feel, comes
Right.
into you.
Mm.
That changes your cellular structure, right? Your genetic code begins to loosen, relax, right? When you get into that state where the dopamine kicks in, your telomeres expand. The oxytocin, when you're rubbing up against people's bodies, makes you feel better. The love drug, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're realizing that there's an interaction between our crystalline bodies, right? Now something interesting is going to happen here, right? Not only are we all resonating, let's think about it as light, okay? So all is one. What is it? We all come from source energy, and the source energy is the sun, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a propagation of it. It's what comes from it, right? And if we put light through a crystal, it comes out a whole bunch of different colors.
Right.
Okay. Propagation of a medium. Your skin, as we've already defined, is a crystal, right? And you can look this up. There's a value of that propagation medium, right? The ability for light to go through and what the color of the light's going to be as it comes out of you, how you absorb it and then re-emit light. That's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We're absorbing sunlight,
Right.
store it in our body, alter its frequency, because we're a crystal, and then we re-emit it, depending on the quality of how you want to re-emit it through a thought, okay? So if it's coming in, and our value is about 1.42 for human skin, right, for absorbing light. Well, your body emits colors. Your eyes are not sensitive enough to see it, but certain instruments can, all right, in a different spectrum. So depending on the quality of your thought, okay, because if you're storing it, your big crystal,
right,
the light you take in and how you absorb it and then re-alter those thoughts with that light energy, that information from the sun, is going to determine how that's emitted from your body. Is it going to be emitted in a perfect rainbow like the Pink Floyd color, you know? Or is it going to be like a dark, muddled brown mess, right? Because you have no coherence within your thoughts. You're erratic, right? There's no peace within yourself. So what you find is that when the crystal, you, yourself, this giant walking crystal, is receiving light energy and it's storing that information, it's letting it go through you, it's your choice whether or not the coherence of your crystal, the quality of your crystalline structure, is going to then take that energy and emit it back out in the frequency it wants to be put at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense because we can store... That's why you feel crazy when you're around bad energy.
Big time. Because you're storing it.
You as a crystal are storing it.
Yeah. And so let's think about it, right? So time, okay? Why do we use quartz crystals and watches? Quartz crystal resonates at 27,000 ohms. So some of the finer quartz crystal that they've used, when you put an electrical charge through it, has been out of Switzerland because that quartz itself has a nice resonant frequency. So that means for every second, it's going to have a sine wave 27,000 times, right? It's
that
crazy,
crystal does, yeah.
Right? And that way, every 27,000 times that period happens, that's 1 second. That's how we measure time in watches, okay? And that's what the crystal's doing. It's storing it, right? But you can alter that time. It's like altering the things within inside your body. So not only are you one giant crystal, we're going to use it in our watches. It's a function of our water. If our atmosphere is a diluted or disparate form of water in a vaporized structure, that means our atmosphere is totally crystal.
Mm-hmm.
When it rains, you see a rainbow, right?
Right.
That's diffraction. So as soon as light going through the water structure and it's emitting all these different colors.
Right.
Right?
That makes
sense.
sense.
And that's perfect. Yeah. It's a perfect emission, a propagation of light through a medium, and the medium be water, to give you a perfect rainbow. You can see the full spectrum of color.
I love that.
The question is, can your body be in that quality of coherence to emit that quality of light? So then when it comes in, you can feel that good. You can transfer that high quality of energy so that you have that blend of white light.
So what I want to do is, for next week,
Oh, I like this.
we're going to talk about specifics, and I want to get into details of how we can emit that and have
Right.
that quality.
I think that's awesome.
And I think that would be something. I hope that we've gave the science of crystals. I hope you guys do research on it.
Yeah.
And that not only are you teaching us, but we're learning. And that's what I love about this podcast, Alex, is not only do we teach each other, but we learn off of each other. And
Yeah.
I hope our whole audience
And
understands that and feels that. That's what we want. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, and it's not really into crystals, but kind of like the vision of this podcast. What do you see it as, Alex?
I see this as the bridge. Okay, and I'm going to use the bridge because that's a metaphor we really like using.
Yes.
That is going to take a world which we have disconnected ourselves from through thoughts in Western science to say that we have no connection to these things that we otherwise can't see, right? That they have an energy because I can't visibly see with my eyes. It's something that's not real.
Mm.
And with this podcast, we want to show that there is a connection between those things that you don't see. And there's a connection between all of us. And that this podcast, when people listen, it's not that they learn and take it all in at once, but they take a sliver of it on their own time. And they begin to learn and research and understand that bridge between the physical world and the non-physical one. Because it's that 50% of your life or the 46% that you've been missing out on. And we want to show you that other half so you can really truly find out who you are and understand that there's no defining difference between all of us. If I'm a crystal and the world's a crystal, what difference is there?
Yes.
We all absorb light. We all emit it. We all share thoughts. We all receive and store. So this podcast, what we're doing is we're sharing our thoughts so that people can receive it, store it, and then re-emit that thought, that energy, that conscious ability that we are putting out on these airwaves.
Because everything that you need to grow and be the person optimized to be who
Right.
you need to be is in you.
All that crystalline structure that you're trying to achieve with inside of you, it's all right there. You have all the nutrients. You have all the different resources internally within you to reflect and look inside and read your own book and understand that I have everything I need to learn and grow and accept and take things exactly as they are without judgment.
And then when that happens, transformation happens.
Massive transformation.
Organically. Without the pressure, without the stress, without having to go to the conference
Yeah.
or buy the books or do this or do that. We're so caught up into this whole philosophy of these external things that we have to stress ourselves out with to make ourselves better. And self-improvement comes how, Alex?
It comes internally. It does not come from anyone else. It's self-improvement is self-taught. It's not self-improvement from being taught. It doesn't happen like that. You're the one that breaks yourself down.
I
You
love
decide the pain. You decide the level of learning. You're the one that has to accept what is actually going on. You have to accept yourself. That happens only with you. I'm kind of like, I'm about to like tear up when you're talking about, but you're right though. Everything we do is on the external.
This world is so stressed out.
And it doesn't need to be.
And it doesn't need to be.
And that's why this podcast replayed 1,000 times. I don't care if you replay the same episode, and that's the only thing you learn in this life.
Right.
Keyword this one.
Right.
Okay? But that is for you. There is no rush. Okay? And if you learn one thing, man, am I happy that you've gone to the point
Yes.
to teach yourself and realize that you always had, from day one, every tool inside of you to figure it out for yourself.
Yes, and you have that power.
Yeah.
You're not a victim.
And you'll begin to see that everything is connected.
Yes.
And then we all are one, and we're all learning the same damn way.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we're going to close out with this one. We're going to get into, for next week, we're
Yeah.
going to get into a little bit more uses, more practicality. We've done the science of crystals, so let's get into...
next week.
That'll be awesome. Well, thanks, Alex.
Thank you,
Look within, and live your life on the edge of two worlds. A reality where you find true understanding of who you are. The learning is done. Become the teacher in embodying the oneness of all. Walk the cliff's edge between the seen and the unseen realities. Become a higher density being. Please go to www.higherdensityliving.com.